A parasite enters a fish through its gills, attaches to the tongue, drains the blood until the tongue shrivels and dies. Then it becomes the new tongue. The fish doesn't reject it. The fish uses it, opens its mouth, and there it is, a crustacean with eyes, staring back out at you, pretending to be part of the anatomy. This is real. It's called Cymothoa exigua, the tongue-eating louse. And it's the first of many things you probably didn't want to know about the natural world. The tongue-eating louse is an isopod, related to the roly-polies you find in your garden, except this one lives in the ocean and has made a career out of identity theft. The female enters through the fish's gills, clamps onto the tongue with her 7 pairs of hooked legs, and starts feeding. She uses specialized jaws to puncture blood vessels. The tongue, starved of oxygen, atrophies, withers, falls off. What happens next is where it gets disturbing. The louse doesn't leave. She attaches herself to the remaining stub of muscle and tissue where the tongue used to be. She positions her body to mimic the shape of the tongue, and then she starts functioning as one. The fish can use the parasite just like it used its original tongue. It can still eat. It can still swallow. The only difference is that now, every time it opens its mouth, there's a parasite with compound eyes sitting where the tongue should be. Scientists call this the only known case of a parasite functionally replacing a host organ. The louse doesn't kill the fish. She doesn't need to. She just takes over. Lives off the fish's blood and mucus, mates inside the fish's mouth, gives birth to a brood of males who disperse and continue the cycle. The relationship can last for years. The fish never knows anything is wrong. In Texas, fishermen have a name for fish infested with tongue-eating lice. They call them bug mouths. It's common enough that nobody's surprised anymore, while the tongue-eating louse is content to hijack a body part. Other parasites want something more ambitious. They want your mind. The jewel wasp is about 1 inch long, metallic green and blue, beautiful in a way that feels like a warning. She's found across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific Islands, and her entire reproductive strategy revolves around turning cockroaches into zombies. When a female jewel wasp is ready to reproduce, she hunts for a cockroach. Not to kill, to control. She delivers 2 stings, each with a different purpose. The first hits the thorax, paralyzing the front legs for about 5 minutes, just long enough to line up the second shot. The second sting is brain surgery. The wasp's stinger is lined with sensory organs that let her feel her way through the cockroach's head. She's looking for 2 specific regions: the subesophageal ganglion, which controls movement, and the central complex, which governs escape responses. When she finds them, she injects a cocktail of neurotoxins directly into the tissue. What happens next is not paralysis. The cockroach can still walk, still move, still respond to stimuli. What it can't do is decide to leave. The venom hijacks the motivation circuitry. The cockroach loses all desire to escape. It will stand still while being eaten alive. It will follow the wasp into a burrow without resistance. It has become, in every functional sense, a zombie. After stinging, the wasp grabs the cockroach by the antenna and leads it to a pre-dug burrow. The cockroach follows like a dog on a leash. Inside the burrow, the wasp lays a single EGG on the cockroach's leg. Then she seals the entrance and leaves. The egg hatches in 3 days. The larva drinks blood from the cockroach's leg for a few days, then chews through the exoskeleton and enters the body. Over the next several weeks, the larva consumes the cockroach from the inside out. It doesn't rush. It doesn't need to. The cockroach is alive the entire time. Its metabolism has been slowed by the venom. It sits in the dark, unable to run, while something eats its organs one by one. The larva saves the vital organs for last. Heart, respiratory system. It wants to keep the food fresh as long as possible. Only when the larva is ready to pupate does it finally kill the host. 6 weeks later, an adult wasp emerges from the cockroach's husk. If it's female, she immediately goes hunting for another victim. Scientists named a related species Ampulex dementor, after the soul-sucking guards from Harry Potter. They weren't being cute, they were being accurate. The jewel wasp isn't alone in the mind control business. There's a fungus that's been doing this for 50 million years. Ophiocordyceps unilateralis infects carpenter ants. A single spore lands on the ant's exoskeleton, germinates, and penetrates the body. The fungal cells spread through the ant's tissues, consuming non-vital organs while avoiding the brain. The ant continues functioning. It goes to work. It interacts with its colony. It has no idea what's happening inside it. Then, at a specific time of day, usually around noon, the infected ant leaves the colony. This is not normal behavior. Carpenter ants live in the canopy. They don't descend to the forest floor, but infected ants do. They climb down from the trees, find a plant about 25 centimeters off the ground, and bite down on a leaf vein. The jaws lock. The ant can't let go. It doesn't want to let go. Within hours, the ant dies, but the fungus is just getting started. It continues growing inside the corpse, eventually erupting from the ant's head in a long stalk. The stalk produces spores that rain down on the forest floor below, where they land on other ants and start the cycle again. Fossil evidence shows that this has been happening since the Eocene, nearly 50 million years ago. The marks left by the death grip bites are so distinctive that scientists can identify them in fossilized leaves. The fungus and the ant have been locked in this dance since before humans existed. Researchers have studied the mechanism. The fungus doesn't actually infect the brain. It leaves that intact. Instead, it controls the ant by manipulating muscle fibers directly. It surrounds the muscle cells with fungal tissue and essentially puppets the ant's body from within. The ant's brain is still there. It just doesn't have control anymore. 98% of infected ants bite into major leaf veins. The positioning is consistent across species and continents. The fungus knows exactly where it wants to be. It's not random. It's precision engineering, executed by something without a nervous system. The deep ocean has its own horrors, and they're not parasites, they're relationships. Male anglerfish are small, about the size of a fingernail. They have no bioluminescent lure. They can't hunt effectively. Their eyes are specialized for one thing, finding a female. They follow pheromones through pitch-black water, sometimes for their entire lives, searching for a mate. When a male finally finds a female, who can be 60 times his size, he doesn't court her. He bites her. He latches onto her body with his sharp teeth and doesn't let go. Then something happens that sounds like fiction. The male releases enzymes that dissolve his own face, and hers. The tissues at the bite site break down, and the two fish begin to fuse. Blood vessels connect. Circulatory systems merge. The male becomes physically attached to the female, permanently. Over the following weeks, the male's body degenerates. He loses his eyes, his fins, his internal organs, everything except his testes. He becomes essentially a pair of gonads attached to the female's body. She provides him with nutrients through the shared bloodstream. He provides her with sperm whenever she's ready to spawn. Some females have been found with 8 males fused to their bodies, 8 former individuals, reduced to reproductive accessories, hanging off her like ornaments. Scientists recently discovered why this doesn't trigger an immune response. In most vertebrates, fusing 2 genetically distinct individuals would cause massive rejection, and the immune system would attack the foreign tissue. Anglerfish have evolved around this problem by losing key components of their adaptive immune system entirely. They've traded immune function for the ability to merge with a mate. The male anglerfish doesn't die in the traditional sense. He just stops existing as a separate organism. His consciousness, if fish have anything like consciousness, becomes part of something else. Whether that's a kind of immortality or a kind of annihilation depends on how you define identity. Back on land, things aren't any gentler. The tarantula hawk wasp has one of the most painful stings of any insect on Earth. On the Schmidt-Sting Pain Index, a scale created by an entomologist who let himself get stung by everything, the tarantula hawk ranks near the top. The pain is described as immediate, excruciating, and totally debilitating. The wasp doesn't use this sting on humans unless provoked. It saves it for tarantulas. When a female tarantula hawk is ready to reproduce, she seeks out a tarantula, often one several times her size. She approaches carefully, dodging fangs, looking for an opening. When she finds one, she stings the spider between the leg joints, directly into the nerve ganglion that controls movement. Paralysis is near instant. Within 2 seconds, the tarantula collapses. The spider is not dead. Its nervous system is intact. Its brain is functioning. It simply cannot move. The wasp drags it, sometimes across distances of 100 meters, to a burrow. She lays a single egg on the spider's abdomen. Then she seals the burrow and leaves. The egg hatches in a few days. The larva begins feeding immediately, starting with the spider's hemolymph, the insect equivalent of blood. Over the next few weeks, it burrows into the spider's body and begins consuming tissue. It eats strategically, avoiding vital organs for as long as possible to keep the food fresh. The spider is alive through most of this process, paralyzed, conscious, and being eaten from the inside. The larva eventually kills the spider by consuming its heart and respiratory system. It then pupates inside the hollow carcass and emerges weeks later as an adult wasp. This process happens millions of times a year across the Americas. Tarantulas have evolved over millions of years alongside these wasps, and they still have no reliable defense. The sting is too fast. The paralysis is too complete. The only thing the spider can do is die slowly in the dark. If you travel to Central or South America, you might encounter something even more personal. The human botfly, Dermatobia hominis, has a creative approach to reproduction. The adult fly is too large and conspicuous to land on a human without being swatted, so it doesn't try. Instead, it captures a smaller insect, usually a mosquito, in midair. The fly glues 10 to 50 eggs onto the mosquito's body, then releases it. The mosquito, unaware of its cargo, continues hunting for blood. When it lands on a warm-blooded host and begins feeding, the body heat triggers the botfly eggs to hatch. Tiny larvae emerge, drop onto the skin, and burrow in, often through the mosquito bite itself or through a hair follicle. What follows is 6 to 12 weeks of development. The larva settles into the dermal layer of skin and begins feeding on tissue. It grows. It molts. It develops rows of hooked spines that anchor it in place. The host notices a painful swelling. Sometimes they feel movement under the skin. The larva breathes through a small hole it maintains at the surface and occasionally secretes bloody fluid through this opening. Travelers returning from endemic regions often don't realize what's happening. The lesion is frequently misdiagnosed as a cyst, a boil, or an infected insect bite. The correct diagnosis usually comes when someone sees movement, or when the larva's breathing tube becomes visible. Removal is surgical. The larva is deeply embedded and won't come out easily. Some traditional methods involve covering the breathing hole with petroleum jelly or bacon, depriving the larva of oxygen and forcing it to back out toward the surface. Even then, extraction requires care. If the larva is crushed, the remaining tissue can cause serious infection. After 6 to 12 weeks, if undisturbed, the fully grown larva exits the skin on its own. It drops to the ground, burrows into soil, and pupates. 3 to 4 months later, an adult botfly emerges, mates, and begins the cycle again. The ocean keeps coming up because the ocean doesn't care about your comfort. Sand tiger sharks are large, slow-moving predators found in warm coastal waters around the world. They look menacing, curved teeth, arched back, perpetually open mouth. What they do before they're born is worse than how they look. Female sand tigers have 2 uteri. During pregnancy, multiple eggs are fertilized in each one. The embryos develop inside their individual egg cases, growing eyes, teeth, and the beginnings of their adult bodies. At some point, the largest embryo in each uterus hatches from its egg case, and then it turns on its siblings. The hatchling, now about 4 inches long, begins hunting inside the womb. It attacks smaller embryos, kills them, and eats them. It consumes unfertilized eggs. It devours anything it can find. The other embryos have no defense. They haven't hatched yet. They're just food. By the time the mother gives birth, only 2 pups remain, one from each uterus. These survivors have already killed all their brothers and sisters. They're apex predators before they leave the womb. Scientists discovered this behavior by accident in 1948, when a researcher reached into a pregnant sand tiger's uterus and got bitten. The embryo was defending its territory. It had already won its first fight, and it wasn't about to lose now. There is an evolutionary logic to this. If females mate with multiple males, and they do, then the embryos are competing not just for space, but for genetic representation. The embryo that eats its siblings might be eliminating its father's rival's offspring. Natural selection favors the fastest, most aggressive embryo. The one that survives is already a killer. The term for this is adelphophagy, literally eating one's brother. Some parasites don't need to eat you. They just need to change how you think. Toxoplasma gondii is a single-celled parasite that can only reproduce inside the gut of a cat. It can infect almost any warm-blooded animal, including humans, but it can't complete its life cycle anywhere except a cat's digestive system. This presents a problem. How does the parasite get into cats? The answer involves rodents and mind control. When Toxoplasma infects a mouse or rat, it migrates to the brain. There it forms cysts in tissue involved in fear and decision-making. The infected rodent undergoes subtle behavioral changes. It becomes less cautious, less afraid of open spaces, and, crucially, less afraid of cat urine. In fact, studies suggest infected rodents become attracted to the smell of cat urine, a stimulus that should trigger immediate flight. The parasite has effectively rewired the rodent's brain to make it easier to catch. The mouse wanders into the open. The cat pounces. The cat eats the mouse. The parasite reproduces in the cat's gut, and its eggs are shed in cat feces, where they wait for another rodent to consume them. Roughly 1/3 of the human population is infected with Toxoplasma. In most people, it causes no symptoms. The parasite forms dormant cysts in brain and muscle tissue and simply waits. But some studies have linked Toxoplasma infection in humans to subtle personality changes, increased risk-taking, slower reaction times, higher rates of traffic accidents. Whether this is the parasite influencing behavior or a coincidental correlation is still debated. Either way, if you've ever owned a cat, there's a reasonable chance something is living in your brain right now. The hairworm, Spinocordodes tallenii, takes a more direct approach. Hairworms are parasites of grasshoppers and crickets. They enter the host as larvae, usually when the insect drinks contaminated water. Inside the host, the worm grows, sometimes reaching 30 centimeters in length, coiled inside an insect just a few centimeters long. The host continues living normally, eating and hopping, unaware of what's developing inside. When the worm reaches maturity, it needs to return to water to reproduce. The problem is that grasshoppers and crickets avoid water. They can't swim. Entering water means death. The hairworm solves this problem by rewriting the host's behavior. Infected insects seek out bodies of water, ponds, streams, puddles, swimming pools. When they find one, they jump in. The insect drowns. The worm emerges, reproduces, and the cycle continues. Scientists have studied the proteins expressed in infected insects and found dramatic changes in brain chemistry. The worm doesn't just nudge the insect toward water. It fundamentally alters how the insect perceives the world. The host is compelled to seek out the very thing that will kill it. Some things don't need parasites to be disturbing. Some things are just built that way. Komodo dragons are the largest lizards on Earth, 3 meters long, 70 kilograms. Endemic to a handful of Indonesian islands. For decades, scientists believed their bite killed through bacteria, rotting meat lodged between the teeth and causing sepsis in wounded prey. This turned out to be wrong. Komodos have venom glands. The venom is an anticoagulant. It prevents blood from clotting. A single bite causes continuous bleeding. The prey, usually a water buffalo, deer, or wild pig, walks away from the initial attack thinking it escaped. It didn't. The dragon follows. It walks behind the bleeding animal for hours, sometimes days, sometimes weeks. It doesn't hurry. It doesn't need to. The prey is getting weaker with every step. Eventually, it collapses from blood loss. Sometimes it dies before the dragon catches up. Sometimes it doesn't. When the dragon arrives, it begins eating. It doesn't wait for the prey to die. It doesn't kill quickly. It starts with the soft tissue, the abdomen and the hindquarters. The prey is often still breathing when this begins. It takes a long time to die. The dragon doesn't care. Komodo dragons have killed humans. Not many, about 5 in the last 50 years, but enough. In every case, the pattern was the same. A bite, a retreat, a slow pursuit, and then dinner. The praying mantis doesn't pursue, it waits. And sometimes what it catches is its mate. Female praying mantises are larger than males. When they mate, the male approaches carefully because the female is a predator and he is the right size to be prey. If he's lucky, mating proceeds without incident. If he's not, the female turns her head, bites off his, and continues mating while eating him. The male's body doesn't stop mating when the head is removed. The nervous system that controls copulation is located in the abdomen. Decapitation actually intensifies the mating behavior. The male's body thrusts more vigorously once the inhibitory signals from the brain are gone. The female gets both a mate and a meal. The male gets nothing except possibly genetic representation in the next generation. Scientists debate whether this behavior is common in the wild or an artifact of captive conditions. In some studies, cannibalism rates are as high as 30%. In others, it's rare. What's not debated is that it happens. Males have evolved to approach females cautiously, from behind, when the female is distracted or feeding. They're trying to avoid being eaten. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sea otters have a reputation for being adorable. They hold hands while floating. They wrap themselves in kelp. They look like nature's stuffed animals. What gets left out of the documentaries is everything else. Male sea otters are aggressive during mating. They bite females on the face and nose, often causing serious wounds. In some populations, a significant percentage of female deaths are attributed to mating injuries, drowning after being held underwater too long, or infections from bite wounds. Males have also been documented mating with dead females, and with other species entirely. In 2010, researchers documented a male sea otter holding a juvenile harbor seal and mating with it for over an hour. The seal died. The otter continued. This wasn't an isolated incident. Similar behavior has been observed multiple times. Sea otters also use pups, their own and others, as leverage against predators. When threatened by sharks or orcas, mothers have been seen abandoning their pups or using them as distractions to facilitate escape. The behavior is rational in a cold evolutionary sense. The mother can have more pups. She can't have more life. Nature doesn't optimize for kindness. It optimizes for survival. And survival, it turns out, looks nothing like the version we tell ourselves. Every animal on this list exists right now. The tongue-eating louse is sitting inside a fish's mouth somewhere in the Pacific. The jewel wasp is dragging a zombie cockroach into a burrow. The fungal spores are raining down on ant colonies in tropical forests. The anglerfish males are fusing to their mates in the darkness of the deep sea. The botfly larvae are feeding inside someone's skin. You didn't ask to know any of this, but now you do. Sleep well. If this didn't ruin your night, there's more coming. Subscribe.